Okay, hopefully these examples will help you understand how to navigate problems that ask you to factor by grouping. It's a little bit different. It's like you're factoring twice. Um, the easy ones are very straightforward. Normally, um, you're going to try to grab the first two terms and the second two terms and see what's common. And when you do that, like if you look at the first two terms here, they both have n squared. So if you'll take out n squared, what remains is n minus 3. And then scoot over to the third and the fourth term, and you could pull out an 8, and that leaves you n minus 3. Now that exposes what your goal in grouping is. Here is the big goal. When you group, and you pull out your greatest common factor, you are wanting these two, what's left when you pull out the GCFs, you're wanting those things to be the same, because what you're going to do is you're really going to factor again, but instead of pulling out one term, you're going to actually take out this binomial. So think about it like, and I'm fixing to make a big mess on this, think this is one whole term here because it's all multiplied together. This is all one term here. You're going to take out the binomial portion of that term. So when we come down here, I'm going to take out the n minus 3. And I'm going to see what remains when I take that out. Well, if I do that to the first term in this first red box, if I take out the n minus 3, all that's left is n squared. Okay, scoot over to the second big term in the red box. If you take out the n minus 3, what remains is the plus 8. And you cannot factor n squared plus 8 anymore, so this is your final answer. You have factored by grouping. Now that's the easy way. Whenever everything works beautifully by grabbing the first two terms together and the second two terms together. There's some little tricks along the way. So like this one. You can still grab the first two terms because there's something common here. And that's going to leave you n plus 1. Anytime you take out the entire term, make sure you put a 1 there as a placeholder. You're not going to eliminate the term. But here, you have negatives. Keep in mind, we're trying to force it to be n plus 1. We don't need negative n minus 1. We need positive n plus 1. So if you'll force it by taking out a negative 6, so think about like you're dividing by negative 6. That's going to leave you positive n, and negative 6 divided by negative 6 is positive 1. And then we're right back where we were in the other one. We're going to take out the binomial. When you take out the binomial, that's going to leave this first part, n squared. It's going to leave this part. Make sure you take the sign portion with it, minus 6. You cannot factor n squared minus 6, so that means that you are finished factoring. So that one's not too bad either. Okay, this one gets a little bit messier, but I think it, straightforward, not too bad. There's enough stuff going on in the first two. Might as well try. Can't really take anything out of the back two except maybe a negative. So let's see. If I take something out of a 20 and something out of 48, could I end up with a 5 and a 12? I do believe so. So I could take out a 4, and I could take out an x squared. Okay, when I do that, 20 divided by 4 is 5. I have one x left over. Let's go over here. 48 divided by 4, well, that's going to be 12. I took all his x's. Okay, now this is a positive 5, and this is a positive 12. So I don't need negatives. I need to take out a negative 1. Now, it would be great if you could write it as just minus. That would be wonderful. If you need to put the 1 there to keep your head straight, by all means put it there. If you can do it without the 1, that's fantastic. Okay, at this point you're wanting these to be the same because that's what you're factoring out. Then go back. What remains then? 4x squared and this right here. So if it trips you up to not have the 1 there, then you might want to put it there so you know what is written here. But think for just a second with me. On all the rest of them, we've been saying, you can't factor, you can't factor. think about 4x squared minus 1. Yes, you can. That is the difference of two squares. So you are obliged to go through and factor that. So you got to do the square root of the first, 2x, square root of the back, 1 and 1, opposite sides. Doesn't matter which one goes where. So you have to factor completely. So, and just a hint, most of the time, if you see instructions that say factor completely, if they're using that word right there, that's like a ginormous hint that says you're most likely going to factor more than once. So this one you did factoring by grouping, and then you factored using difference of two squares. Okay, keep going. This one's a little interesting. I wanted to show you a couple that had some quirkiness to them. If you tried to group the first two, you could take out a 2, but think about it. If you did that, if you took out a 2, that would leave me A plus 2CD, because you cannot take out any letters because there's nothing in common. Well, if you come over here to the second 2, the only thing you could possibly take out would be a negative. Okay, if you did that, he's going to end up looking like this. Now, think, our goal has been to get these two things to be the same. Are they? No, they're not. So that did not work. So you can't just automatically grab the first 2 and the second 2. This did not work because we do not have a match. Since this didn't match, you need to back up, try again. So, and you may actually want to keep a record of it. So maybe you don't want to erase. Maybe you just want to put a line through it so that you can go back and see, okay, that's why I chose not to do that. So instead of doing the first and the second, let's try the first and the third. What's common there? I could take out an A. That leaves 2 minus D. Okay, so now let me do this one and this one. And I purposely include the signs when I do that. I can take out a, for right now, let's just do a plus sign. I can take out a 4 and I can take out a C. That's going to give me D minus 2. Because 8 divided by 4 is 2, and I took his C. Now, when you investigate, these are not exactly alike, but they're not that far off. You see, it's the same terms, but they're backwards by a negative. Now, just think about it. If you've got D minus 2, if you distributed a negative, it's negative D plus 2. Isn't that what you get? The only difference is a negative. So, if you've never seen it before, you can force these things to be the same. I'm going to spin this second one around to look like the first one. I'm just going to change this positive sign to a negative sign because we're using this idea right over here. So I'm going to make that negative, and he's going to turn around. You are allowed to do that. You can spin this around a subtraction sign as long as you pick up a negative on the outside. That's okay. Now, this is a perfect match. And once you get a perfect match, you can keep on going. And it's the same thing we were doing earlier. A minus 4C. Nothing can continue factoring. You don't have any squares, so you are done. So that one was a little different. You could not do the first and second. All right, last one I have for you is a little different. If you tried to do 2 of them together, it's not going to work. This is one where you need to do 3 together. When you factor these 3 together, 2 numbers that multiply to 16 and 8, that would be 4. Signs are the same, both plus. You may have already seen it, but this is just a perfect square binomial, or a perfect square trinomial right here, so it gives you that binomial squared. And then, should have brought him down. That little negative y squared's just been coming along for the ride. Now, if you look at this, think of this thing as one term. We're going to factor again. Okay. You've got to do the square root. Now, don't change any signs there. You're just doing the square root of this thing right here, which is just x plus 4. And then the square root of the back, which is just y. And then you have to change your signs. So if you really wanted to clean it up and make them look a little bit nicer, you really don't need the parentheses inside. And most, if you look them up in the back of a textbook, they're going to change it and put it in a standard form where you have your letters in alphabetical order and you're going to have your constant at the end. So if you wanted the finalized answer, they're going to write it that way. So there's just a little exposure on factoring by grouping. Hope it helps.